Hey everybody. So today I wanted to talk about Vagrant. Uh, so now that we have our cloud stood up and it's functioning and we're doing updates and maintaining it, now it's time to look at some other tools that can be used with the cloud, can help automate spinning up your VMs. They work hand in hand with OpenStack. There's a lot of tools out there, Chef and Puppet, and I mean there's tons of things you can do. But uh, recently I've been looking at Vagrant. So what Vagrant is, it's a quick piece of software that you can install on Windows, Linux, Mac, on pretty much anything. You can put it on your desktop, and then with just a couple of commands, you can actually tie into the API on OpenStack and spin up VMs and destroy VMs and use them right from your desktop. It's a pretty simple install, and you can configure specific OS and different VMs with a Vagrant file. So you configure the file and then just do a Vagrant up, and it will bring up all of the um, different properties that you've put in your Vagrant file. It will put those on your VM, and then you can use it in kind of a development scenario. So everyone would have the same machine every time available to them, and then when you're done, you destroy it, and when you want to work on it again, you just bring it back up. It's pretty cool. I just kind of wanted to go through the steps of how to set it up and talk about it a little bit. So first things first, let's go ahead and download. You go to vagrantup.com and we'll download Vagrant. Today I'm using Windows, so we'll grab the Windows version and we'll let that download. Okay, download's done. Let's go ahead and install it. It's a pretty simple install. We just kind of click through here. Vagrant by default uses uh, Virtual Box, Oracle's free virtualization software. Uh, so when we do the initial file build, it will try to spin up all of its VMs in VirtualBox as kind of a development environment. We'll test with that first, but then we'll build a file to port it over to OpenStack. Vagrant sets some environment variables, and it's probably a good idea to restart after the install. So I'll be right back. Okay, we're back after the reboot. So to make things a little more organized, let's create a folder to start our Vagrant project in. I just use my home directory. Let's just create one called Vagrant and create one called Project. Okay. Now, since we have Vagrant installed and we have VirtualBox installed, it's important to remember to have VirtualBox installed. We installed that on a couple videos back. We can just go to the DOS command line and let's get into the folder that we just created. And you can just do all the Vagrant commands. We'll just test it by doing Vagrant. This will bring up your initial help file, so you know it's installed correctly. You can do a Vagrant list commands for additional info, just typical help syntax. But to get you started, all you really need to do is do a Vagrant init, and that's going to generate the initial file. The Vagrant it runs around this initial file, the Vagrant file, and this is where you configure everything. So you can just edit it in Notepad. So pull that up. This is all written in Ruby. I don't know a lot about Ruby, but these files are pretty self-explanatory, and as always, there's tons of information out on the internet that we can use. So basically, take a look at this file, but this is the vanilla config that you get when you do a Vagrant init. So when you do this Vagrant configure, it's kind of important to remember this is the version number of Vagrant that you want to use. We're on 2 and up, so there's a 2 there. And then it's pretty much one big do command, just like any other scripting language. So they configure it, and it tells you in here what it's going to configure. So you configure a VM, and they call them boxes in Vagrant. So this command is what tells Vagrant to spin up the environment, the box that you want. It's set to this default, but you can go to this website and you can get different types of boxes. There's a bunch of already configured Vagrant box configs, and if you don't have them on your PC, Vagrant will just download them for you if you go get the link. There's one that's very generic, and it's this one right here. It's just a Ubuntu Precise image, but you can just replace that. You click on this, so it'll tell you what you need to do to get this done. We're going to test with VirtualBox first, so you can actually just run that init command. We're going to put this in the Vagrant file as our base. This is what we spin up every time we deal with the Vagrant Up command. So let's go back and replace that base with this. That's pretty much the only change you would have to make to get Vagrant to spin up a box for you. Again, there's all kinds of different commands that you can run in Vagrant. These are network config options. These are just the vanilla ones. I mean, you'll see as we go into the OpenStack install, all the different kinds of things you can do. You can set memory. You can get it to run a shell script for you. Do updates on every time you bring up your Vagrant box. You can get it to update and install certain things. If you want it to be a web server every time, if you want it to be a database server, whatever you want, you can set it in this file, and that's what makes it handy. So go ahead and save that. And then if you go back to the command line where your Vagrant file is, all you have to do is a Vagrant Up. And this is using again, by default, it uses VirtualBox. So it's using the VirtualBox backend that's on your PC. It's downloading that link that we gave it as our base machine. You can see it right there. And it is going to spin it up in VirtualBox. Now it takes a little bit to download that image because it's a whole OS. So give it a couple of minutes. After the first time you do that, you do the download though. Anytime you do a Vagrant Up, it won't go through this process again. It'll know you already have it. Okay, the image has finished downloading. Now it's importing the base box. Okay, and Vagrant has created that virtual machine. Now if we go into VirtualBox, you have a running VM. So Vagrant talked to VirtualBox, used that config file, downloaded the link that we gave it for that precise image, and spun it up in VirtualBox for us. Now you can tell Vagrant to use a specific PuTTY or a different SSH tool. You could tell it to install OpenSSH so that you can automate a ton of stuff in that Vagrant file. So each time you do this Vagrant Up command, it brings it up exactly how you want it, and it's exactly the same. Most of the images that you download, the username and password are going to be Vagrant. But you can come through here and just check it out. I mean, it's just a regular image. So they've tailored it a little bit for VirtualBox, of course, and you can do the same. You can create an image in VirtualBox, tailor it how you want, and then use it as a Vagrant box. I mean, sky's the limit with this thing. Uh, it is important to note that when you do this, so we have this Vagrant file system, and this is shared in between. Sorry about that. So it's shared in between all of the Vagrant boxes. So you could spin up multiple, images, multiple machines, and they would share that Vagrant file system on the back end, on the back end of the virtual appliance. So you can share things with other Vagrant box users. So when I first did this, I said to myself, so yeah, this is all fine and good. I used a configuration file and a command on my Windows machine instead of coming in here and building my own VirtualBox, which takes, about the same amount of time. So that's all fine and good, but why do I need that? Well, in the VirtualBox on your machine scenario, it's not super useful. Other than the fact that you could take that Vagrant file, ship it to somebody else, email it to them, and they would have the same exact machine that you have if they set up this VirtualBox environment. So if you're a development team and you're testing a piece of software, that would be super useful because I set this machine up this way, my software works on it, now I'm going to send you this Vagrant file, you have Vagrant installed on your machine, all you have to do is put that Vagrant file in a directory, go to that directory, do a Vagrant Up, it goes to a location on the internet, grabs the same image that you were using, and sets all the same options that you set up. So that's really handy. Now you can start to see why there would be advantages to this. So that's fine with VirtualBox. But now let's talk about integrating it with OpenStack. So as always, there's a lot of great information on the internet. Really all you need to do, keep that there. Let's just go how to Vagrant on OpenStack. There's a ton of different ways of doing it and different ways of building the file. But you can just run out here and like this one's a good one. I'll put that link on the site. This will show you all kinds of videos on how to do this. But then there is one that just has a file example. That's pretty good. This one is really good. So first thing you need to do is install the Vagrant OpenStack plugin. It's just a regular Vagrant command. Go back to command line, paste that guy in there. And he's going to make the Vagrant plugin available. He's going to go download it so that we can interface with OpenStack. While that's working, let's grab this configuration file and just open it up with Notepad. Paste that in there, and we'll kind of go through this. Remember that it has no extension as well when you save it. So this is that API version. We're using version 2, so you can delete everything. Just put a 2 in there. Specify the username or OpenStack Cloud, the images that we use in OpenStack. Use Ubuntu, so use that. The private key, we will store that in the same file that our project is in. This is saying that you're using Vagrant from a Linux machine. That's why it's giving you the home location. But we'll just put that there. I don't remember what my key's called. Let's see. We can go find it real quick. It's called Chris PRI-PPK. So that's what it'll be called, and we'll copy that into the project that we're getting ready to create, where we're getting ready to save this file so we can find it. Provider will be OpenStack. So your OpenStack URL. So now we need to go grab some information. This is the same type of information that's out on the website already that I've told you about: tenant names, usernames. When you do these export commands to make this available to how to connect to your cloud with the API. But we'll walk through it again on how to get access to this type of stuff. So let's just get into the cloud here. We'll go ahead and log into Landscape. It's been a minute. And we'll open the dashboard in a new tab. Some of this stuff you can get from here. So in the newer versions, it used to be a lot of this stuff was kind of parked down here, the API location and names and things, but now they load them into files. So you can pull this open for, we're going to use the admin account. So just open this file up in WordPad or whatever. I use Notepad++. We'll show it in the folder. Probably have a million versions. So here's all the info that you really need to put into your Vagrant file. So here's your API location. So we'll put that in here. And then, as you can see from the file, all this is admin. We'll grab the password because it's ridiculous long. We'll just paste that here. And this will be admin because we're using the admin account. And our tenant name is admin as well because that's our project. We just have one project. Whatever your project name, that's what that'll be. So let's go ahead and now that we have the password created, let's log into OpenStack so I can show you what it's talking about a little bit here. It's talking about flavors and sizes and all that good stuff. So go back to your file. Let's take a look. What's it want? So it wants server name. So whatever you want to name it. We'll just keep it Vagrant Test. How big's the flavor? We can keep it small, but make sure that your flavors are called M1 small. That's what they are by default in OpenStack. But go to flavors. And so yeah, M1 small. That's good. Go back to your file. Image. Okay, so we need to get what our image is called. So let's go to images. And I always use the 14.4. So this is the name of it. So you need to use this exact name. You can rename these. You can put, whatever images. You can use Windows, do whatever you want. But this is just for the ease of this video. We'll just use the existing default 14.04 image. We're using the public pool because our floating IP pool is public. Vagrant Net OS networks. So you need to go to the network tab and take a look and make sure what these are called. So we have the admin net is the OS network, and then we have an external net, which is also the floating IP network. So this needs to be admin net. I think it's an underscore. It is. And we need to get our key pair. This will actually be, this is something different than I thought it was. This will actually be externet, the name of the external network that we use the floating IP pool. Let's see what our key is called. So let's go to admin. No, I think it's in projects. Projects. Compute security. Key pairs. We're going to use the Chris key pair. So go back to here. And that's the pair that I've created that I have part of it on. I've got the private part on my machine, public part out there in OpenStack. And then security groups. So we have a default, and then in our install, we have an all security group, which that's a couple videos ago. That's every port that's open. So we'll just when it spins up an instance on here, it'll already have that security group on it. Okay. Go back to our file. That's pretty much all you need to do. This is the generic setup to use Vagrant with the OpenStack backend. Again, you can run shell scripts when you spin one up. You can do all different kinds of things with Vagrant. Just get out on the internet. It'll show you everything you need to know. So let's save this file, but first, let's go create a different project. So let's back up. Let's just call this, let's create another folder in our Vagrant folder called OpenStack. And then we can save our new OpenStack Vagrant file in there. We'll save that right there, and we'll call this OpenStack. Actually, these have to be called Vagrant file. I'm sorry, I forgot. And we don't want any extension for Vagrant file. So set it to all, and just hit save. So that's it. Okay, there is one more thing we forgot to do. You have to make sure that your private key, whatever location you said your private key was in, you need to make sure that private key file is in there. So just make sure that's correct, copy your private key in there, and then you should be good. Now, we should be able to just do from your OpenStack folder, make sure you're in the right project folder, you should be able to just do a Vagrant Up, and that will start your server. I want you to notice there is currently nothing, no instances, nothing out here. So let's do Vagrant Up. And it should start building our server. And it's building. So that's good. Now, you can set up SSH so that it will pop open a SSH window as you are building your server. But as with Windows, it's a lot more difficult with Windows than it is like in a Linux environment. So you're going to get this error saying, hey, you don't have any SSH executables. Why don't you install one and all that stuff. But it'll give you the information you need to set up PuTTY or whatever you want to use. I use PuTTY. So we can just use PuTTY and our key, our private key that we have to set up PuTTY to get into this instance, just like any other OpenStack instance. So let's take another look at this. See, it created the floating IP. Let's take a look at the console. Console looks good. So let's just grab PuTTY. And I've already got some of these set up out here with my private key. I'm going to load this one and just change that to 4 because that was our Vagrant instance. The reason why I grabbed this one is because it already has our key out here. So we can use it just like any other OpenStack. So we'll just call this one Vagrant. Save it and open. And there it is. Vagrant spun up an instance for us to use. And it would be exactly the same if you wanted to build it over and over and over and over again. Now we're using, instead of VirtualBox, we're using OpenStack as our backend. So that's how, now you can kind of see how Vagrant would be very useful to developers or to certain types of teams where they could all have the same thing right from their desktop. They just enter a command and it brings it up. So now if you want to get rid of this instance, you can just exit out of here. You see this instance has been running for a while. Just come to Vagrant in the same folder, Vagrant destroy. And it will spin down the instance. And it's gone. Vagrant cleaned it up. So this is just kind of an introduction to Vagrant. You can see how you can do all different kinds of things with this and the possibilities that it gives you. You don't have to be a cloud administrator. You can just be someone that needs a virtual environment, and you can share that in virtual environment with people on their machine. I hope this helps, and that's all for this one. Thanks.